It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Man, look who I got in that intersection between the digital and physical world. None other than Rick Lambert in Canada. How are you doing, Rick?
Great, Ray. Thank you so much. You've come a long way from the China cabinet. Just want to congratulate you on the great things you're doing here on LinkedIn to educate and scare the you-know-whats out of a lot of imaging dealers. Good job.
Well, I got to tell you something. Me and Rick actually met in that intersection between the digital and physical world. And Rick, you want to tell the story? Or you want me to tell the story? Because it's a pretty interesting story how social media actually works. But go ahead.
Well, I know you like your stories, so I'm on LinkedIn where I spend a lot of time. I think it's arguably the #1 undisputed platform for today's business-to-business sales professionals.
Absolutely. You heard it from Rick.
What's that?
I said they just heard that from you. I just want to make that official.
All right. Well, we're validating it here because wherever we stay has got to be gospel. But, so I watch this guy and I think what a great message he's got. And it's fact-based. It makes sense. But he's got this China cabinet behind him. But I thought the China cabinet was speaking louder than you. So we connected on LinkedIn because I thought you had a lot of great ideas. And I wanted to help you from a video perspective, which we did some things initially.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that is I remember Rick saying, well, let's get that green screen set up. I did all the green screen stuff. Then you had to do the editing. It's really complicated. My problem is I don't have any patience, and I was popping out this content every single day, and it was kind of getting cumbersome for the editors. So then I decided, well, let me figure out a better way to do that. And now today, what do we see Rick doing? Holding that camera as he's on a trip talking about something that's relevant to the industry. So I think we both learn from each other, but one thing's for sure today, if you're not using video, you're nuts. Do you agree with me on that?
Well, we've probably done, I'm going to say, easily 10,000 videos for different clients, a lot of them in the imaging and managed services space. And there's nothing like the appetite for video right now. There's a reason YouTube's the #2 search engine.
Sure.
And I think, Ray, in short, we're in a skimming environment right now. People are skimming everything, documents, social media. And what we see from the analytics is there's a huge spike when someone does a video. I would argue that the drop-off point we're seeing in a business video, in other words, I'm not watching my favorite rock band.
Sure.
The business video drop-off's around 35 seconds. Mm-hmm. I know your users stay on much longer, especially today. But I think short, impactful videos to the point are very, very popular right now.
I do, and I agree, and there's a science to it. And my philosophy was, let's get some messages that we can iron down in about 2 minutes. As you start to build your clientele and you start to build your audience, and they want more value or they want more content, you could stretch those videos out, obviously, and I've done that. But what's interesting to me, Rick, you're out there selling, you're out there training, you're an executive in the industry, you've had feet on the streets. You're really trying to help mold that future rep from a training perspective. What do you see today in the persona of a rep compared to when I was a rep, 90 years ago?
Well, they don't pull up on a horse anymore.
There you go. Or the station wagon.
Yeah, exactly. With, 3 MFPs in the back. Hey, look, I started in the industry in '89 with Xerox. A Canadian guy wanted to be a professional hockey player. Obviously, that didn't work out for me being on your show today.
Yeah.
But what's changed is the technology, obviously, but the individual that's in front of the technology, because I still think people buy from people. And we can do all the arguments around e-com and all those great things. Look, we've had an e-com platform with resellers for, I'm going to say, probably a decade. And there's absolutely a spot for that. But I still believe when you get beyond a commodity type sale, there needs to be a sales element there. And so what we've tried to do at Sell to Win is help the imaging dealer, which is your audience here today, accelerate, I'll call it that, period to profitability with a new hire. Because, the average dealer, this is what we see anyway, this is a survey we did last year, the 100 dealers, the turnover is crazy. It's between 27 and 39% with the red line, 39% being in metro centers.
Sure.
And I think, the biggest change is we've got to adjust to this new millennial seller that represents 50% of our sales force in many cases, that's comfortable with technology, but I think, sometimes we assume as business leaders or sales leaders that they know how to ride the bike. And they literally got all these skills, but they don't know where the pedals are, where to put their feet. And what we assume is common sense isn't always that common.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the executives that are in charge of these millennial reps are trying to manage them in a world that they're comfortable with. And today, those millennial reps could probably teach a lot of the sales, leadership how people are buying. And this has always been a critical component of the imaging channel from my perspective is we're selling every single customer exactly the same way. There is a platform for e-commerce, but that's not a platform for a major national account to go sell them a bunch of equipment and do a real enterprise deliverable. Obviously not. But the reps, we bring them in, and the training platforms are usually, it's all the same customer. You're going to go sell a desktop printer, you're going to go sell a production print, and the same agreement, same serve, everything's the same. So when you go into these dealerships and you're trying to work with the owners on training these reps, what kind of pushback do you get as you try to inject some of these newer approaches to the market?
So first of all, I'd like to thank if any of our customers are on today for inviting, ourselves to an offering, whether it's our live events or our on-demand academy, into your environments. I can tell you that, over 20 years we've been in business, we've never had someone hire us once and not again. And so I use that candidly as a big dipstick of customers getting value. The pushback is typically this, like, what's the ROI, if I invest in this type of training platform or, your services? Because, Ray, one of the things we do is, I don't think, look, we've all been to these training sessions where we gauge the value by the weight of the binder, and we're completely against that. I mean, we do something what we call corporate entertainment, because I believe today the learner needs to be stimulated in different ways. I mean, if there's not something fitting, there's no contest, there's no prize on the line. And I don't mean that in a gimmicky way. What I mean is we need to stimulate. So the pushback is, hey, can you connect with my millennial and my tenured reps, because it's a different persona? And then do you understand my industry? Because, if you don't understand the whole, the mix of technology that today's MSP or MSSP, right, for the security offers, I think a lot of organizations push back on training because it's hard for the reps to take a concept in training that came from another industry, as basic as it sounds, and then implement it the next day. And then the biggest pushback, lastly, is, people don't want to pay for a one-time hit. So right now we're booking a lot of kickoffs for January, the fiscal kickoff. And I always tell people, look, it's like a one-day diet. Like, I wouldn't hire us, candidly, to do a one-day kickoff if you don't have some ongoing workout like a diet. So the pushbacks, am I going to get any ROI? Have you got proof cases? And lastly, can you relate to my young and tenured people that are a little more advanced?
Well, I think it goes down to that we're losing our personality. And the way you obtain your personality is a lot different today than it was in 1990. So if you go back in my career in 1990, before we went out on a blitz, we used to call them and we'd go out and just try to sell as much as we could and make as much contact as we could. But there was that energy level. There was that, let's get fired up and go sell something. And today, we still want to get fired up and go sell something, but we get fired up a different way. And the millennials get fired up a different way. And I think sometimes we just lose sight of that. How do we fire up these people? I do like your live events. I think those are awesome, and I know that Cartridge Worlds uses you for as an example for the some of your expertise, and you're kind of all over the verticals. You're not just in the print channel. Does that help you deliver better to the print channel, the fact that you go to all these other verticals?
So we started in the tech space years ago with Ingram Micro, so we had sightlines into all the big tech players. And what I found, Ray, is just that there's a lot of people, I think, and I mean this with all due respect, that are retired or they don't come from the field, and I think it's a final run around the track for them. And what we've really tried to do is deliver practical, tactical methods that we see working and share those best practices across the industry. Just back to your point there about, motivation is, we got the desire trumps everything, right, in terms of the DNA of a rep. One of the big things we're seeing right now is, you talked about the difference, in terms of, how to handle or manage these reps. And I asked someone last week, I said, do you think your customers in your territory have seen more of your reps' business cards in the last month, or looked at more of your reps' LinkedIn profiles?
Great question.
And the dealer right away said, well, probably LinkedIn profiles. And I said, well, why are we doing something there?
Oh, yeah.
And I use LinkedIn as an example, and typically it's a beachhead opportunity for a lot of our clients because they realize they look like a disaster online.
Sure.
And, I'm generalizing here. Yeah. Their reps are not sharing content. And I would argue it's the ultimate business chamber of commerce meeting that we need to get active in. And, you're a perfect example of how you scaled your personality, your personal brand. And I think it's just so simple if people can just get pedaling a little bit. And that's what we're helping them do right now on LinkedIn.
Well, LinkedIn is so important. And especially when these reps start moving into that real IT service deliverable, a more broader deliverable, most CIOs, when you go in and have that meeting, the first place they go is to your LinkedIn profile. And they look for a couple of things. They're looking for what groups are you in. I've noticed a lot of the industry, they're all the same groups. They're all in the groups around the industry. They're not in the groups that they sell to. You know, why is a copier company or a copier rep that's seasoned not in the restaurant association group in his market? He might learn something. And so, or the bankers association. So we need to broaden what we're doing. But right now, the number one thing we need to do is friggin' get online and get your profile cleaned up. I'll be a little bit more abrasive with it because it's terrible out there.
Ray, I'll give you a twist on your status quo. I'm sure clothes we're going to use today. There's a Canadian saying, it comes from one of the great Canadian hockey players, Wayne Gretzky. And he said a long time ago, don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where the puck is going.
Absolutely.
Right? So, you know, we're talking about LinkedIn. So my next question to the gentleman that I asked this just last week, you know, business cards or LinkedIn profiles, and I said, you know, how are you integrating LinkedIn as part of your activity mix? Because the traditional knock on doors, phone calls, send emails, I think what we're trying to coach our customers now anyway is how to use LinkedIn to immediately scale, create a digital sales force, and just some numbers for people watching today. I mean, we're suggesting that they do at the rep level 3 to 5 posts a week,
sure,
and connect with 30 of those technology people or whoever their stakeholder is every week, and we're showing them how to create that content. Right? For you, it's easy to create content, but for the layman or the sales rep that may be new to the industry, or even a tenured dude that's uncomfortable on camera, we're giving them calendars and coaching them on here's how to dress your mannequin online, make it easy for them to engage. And they're just killing it versus their competition.
Well, you know, content's king, and you know, there's no bad content as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral. And people have to just get the damn camera out and do it sometimes. And it's not rocket science, but it is where the market's going. And it's, you know, the people that keep fighting this are kind of silly. It's almost like not worth really trying to argue about it anymore. But when you look at where social media is, I think and we did a podcast on this not too long ago, and I made a comment that the problem that I see is everybody talks about it as social selling. And it's not about selling. It's about engagement. Social's about engagement to build form a relationship to then go and offer your goods and services. But what really happens in reality is the buyers come to you, just like Rick came to me, just like most of the people on Tessera came to me. And so when you think about that, we're not out there trying to sell people and always have a call to action on every video we do. We don't need to do that. We need to give the buyers content that makes sense to them. Do a video, if you're in the imaging channel, do a video on how equipment helps real estate businesses. That's the video.
So, Ray, just to put some examples for your people watching today, you know, when we work with clients, we look at their social channels. So take LinkedIn, for example. And we sit with the client, we say, okay, look at how many likes or comments you had on the content you're posting. And a lot of them are using this generic content, you know, happy woman at desk with, you know, group behind her type of thing, and it's a generic. Look, you can do that, but I can tell you right now, that went out about 3 years ago. People skim right past that. And, you know, through video, which you and I have talked about, you know, our services in terms of we'll go into a dealer, we'll create a custom suite with their people, showcasing their questions. And really the big shift as you're talking about, I think, is going from promotional to educational. Mm-hmm. And that's the, you know, I would argue the cheese and the trap that draws them in. And it's a big shift for a lot of people. But I think if you understand and have a strategy around it, it can be a lot easier to get up and going if you've got a good, you know, organization that's done it before. There's a lot of them in the marketplace. We're not the only one, but I think, you know, our insight into what's happening, whether you're selling, you know, copiers, MFPs, apps, you're selling managed print, managed, you know, IT, or you're selling managed security services. If we get those, like a CIO on staff. In fact, as you know, you met her, we just hired a anchor person off a national TV channel here in Canada because I wanted that video power mind to come up with stories and create short videos. Sure. And we're seeing it in terms of the analytics, like it's just going through the roof in terms of, because really what you want to do is you want to create awareness and then be top of mind at what we call that point of need, where the customer says, you know what, I need snow tires. I should think of those guys, or I actually need a copier. But
well, let me ask you, Rick, do you have any of the organizations that you consult with, are they actually holding reps accountable to a social strategy, or are they just saying, oh, if he does it, he does it, or she does it, she does it?
Yeah, so in a couple ways. Number one, a lot of them, believe it or not, have no social media policy for their sales force. And what I mean by that
that's not good.
You know, we've got a policy when we started a dealership, let's say, for everything from where you park, don't make long-distance phone calls, whatever it is. And yet when you get to social media, it's like the Wild West, and a rep who's coming off Instagram or Snapchat, like a lot of millennials, they don't know how to drive LinkedIn. It's a business channel. And so, how do they handle a complaint, etc. So we've come up with these type of simple policies, and then what we do is, we work with them to make sure that they get a 30, 60, 90, because the problem is, Ray, this is easy for you, but for other people, it's like I got to get around to doing it. And so what we try to do is help them. We create it, we serve it up, cut the way they want, the right temperature, then they can just post it or create it themselves.
All right, I got to clarify something, because he said it a couple different times. This crap ain't that easy. It's not that it's. I have an aptitude for it, but I still got to work at it, just like everybody else. If you go back to my videos and go to that very first one, it's terrible. Hell, I was reading something off a sheet of paper that you couldn't see. Yeah. So it does take work. I've done over 200 videos, so it takes a while to get better at it. But it's not like this guy was born that or this guy was born that or girl. I mean, we have to work at everything that we do, and social needs to be part of what we work at, obviously. And the world's changing drastically. So let me ask you one final question here, Rick. As you're looking into 2020, what do you believe? Because there's a lot of things. I'm way out there. I'm already in 2025. But if you're looking in 2020, what do you see that a dealer needs to do right now? Have a plan of action for over the next 6 months so they can start it in June and get it done by 2020 around sales training.
Okay, so sales training, first of all, I think it's only one of the front tires. Spoke at a Great America event recently, great one, called Smarketing. And what I was talking about is how I believe, anyway, digital marketing attracts and brings a customer down to a certain point of interest. Mm-hmm. E-com, great if it's a commodity, but in many cases, I think that's where a lot of the marketing effort stops. And what we're trying to do is combine training with marketing. So if I was a dealer, I would think about what is my new hire boarding process. And to that end, not to do a commercial, but that's what we've created on-demand programs. They're affordable and industry specific, but combining training and marketing, I would amp it up immediately on LinkedIn. Right now I'm running my top 10 pro tips before Christmas, if anybody's on my channel. Mm-hmm. But I think just look at what's driving success for others, because success leaves clues, and we've now got the data to prove what we're doing works for dealers. And back to your A3, A4 argument, Ray, I mean, this is the exact reason we see a lot of things you talk about in your programs, and that's why we're building our new program, Selling A4 to Win. Sure. Because we're doing that with one of our clients, Cartridge World, who doesn't obviously offer the big boxes like the others. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. I think, the A4 revolution is full of force. Well, Rick, I got to tell you, it's always great talking to you. I look forward to coming up there in Canada and seeing you again. Maybe we can play some hockey again. But, you're going to help me with this, right? Because here we go, my friends. I'll end this like I always do. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and have a fantastic day. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, buddy. Bye.